My name is Mark Eyre. I am the Director of Customer Operations here at BrightSquid Secure Mail. Let's take a look at what's wrong with traditional collaboration. And this comes across a little harsh, I suppose, but really there's three things that I see a lot in medical practices when it comes to sharing of patient information. Faxing is sort of the de facto standard for a lot of practices, and the fax machine, if it's still the center of your office, it can be a little frustrating. Faxing takes a lot of time. It can, you'll dial the number, you'll wait for the beeps and the bonks to finish, and then it goes through and it doesn't go through, or it's dialed the wrong number. And actually dialing that wrong number can often be probably one of the more common vectors for potentially leaking patient information to the wrong place. The 5 key is right next to the 6, and it's not difficult to misdial that. Plus, it takes up a lot of paper, both on your side and on their side. And from a pure privacy standpoint, when you're sending a fax to another practice, what are the chances that that fax machine is not in a secure area? I'm focused a lot on security and privacy, and I think a lot about how, if that fax machine is sitting at the front desk and a piece of paper comes out of it and it's in view of a patient who's waiting for their appointment, is that potentially a violation of their privacy if that information is visible to other patients? But from a pure convenience standpoint, the last bullet point there, what about diagnostic imagery? Sure, we can send a document that says words and text, but if I'm trying to send photographs or x-rays or other high-resolution imagery, or a CT scan for that matter, really faxing is not going to work for that. And I know that a lot of practices are using couriers to deliver that kind of information now, which, well, that can get kind of expensive. One of the doctors I talked to recently pointed out that sending, printing off information or putting it onto a disk and then hiring a courier to take it from point A to point B can cost as much as $50 to $100 just to transmit that data to another practice. Now, mailing, I just talked about how couriers can cost a lot of money. Even traditional snail mail through the post office is still expensive. Takes a long time. A courier might get you there in a couple of hours. Mail, probably 2 or 3 days, depending on where you are and where you're trying to send that information. And it takes a lot of resources. We don't always think about this, but just the pure effort of printing something, putting it into an envelope, licking the stamp, it's more work than really we would like to be doing, perhaps. And then finally, email. Now, the issue with email is that, first of all, it's over 30 years old. And when email was initially designed, it was never intended to be a private or a compliant method of communication. Email was intended to take a short message and send it to someone else. Even the very basic concept of attaching a file to an outgoing email message was not part of the original design spec for email. It was really just for text messages. And the way that email works is that when I send a message from my office to someone in another town or another country, for that matter, that message goes out onto the internet and sort of jumps from server to server or from town to town to get from my location to theirs. And all those hops through all those middleman servers are going through systems that are not owned by either me or the recipient. And therefore lies the real problem with email from a security standpoint. We don't know what happens to your information. We can't keep track of that chain of custody. So it's very difficult, in fact impossible, to state that any email messaging is compliant.